Hello and welcome to the Weather Studio. It's 1 o'clock, it's Tuesday. We are broadcasting live from the very heart of the Met Office. I'm Alex Deakin.
And I'm Aidan McGibbon. Coming up this week, devastating fires in California, big news story. Is there any hope on the horizon? We'll be looking at the latest forecast for California. And Jordan, raging torrents of rivers and flash flooding. Amazing images. We'll be looking at the rainfall in the Middle East. And the UK weather, of course, will have the forecast for the next week or so for the UK. Temperatures are rising, but then they're falling. All the info on that.
Yes, the forecast is interesting for the UK, particularly in the longer range. Through the weekend and next week, it is getting colder. And we will have more on that in just a moment. But first of all, do get in touch with us. Send us in your questions. We are broadcasting live on YouTube, on Twitter, and also on Facebook. Remember to give us a thumbs up if you like what you see, and do send in your questions. We will try and answer as many as we can during the course of the programme. Please don't just ask, is it going to snow? Because we'll kind of be answering that towards the end. But any other meteorological questions that you can think of, do send them in, and we'll try and get through as many as we can. But first off, what are we talking about, Aidan?
Well, this satellite picture says it already. This is a satellite image of California for yesterday afternoon local time, and you can see here this plume. It's not cloud, it's smoke coming out of an enormous raging fire. And well, the California fire season, it happens every year, and it typically runs from the middle of the summer through to the early part of autumn. But we're into the middle of November now, and firefighters are still battling three infernos, three large fires: the Camp Fire north of Sacramento, and then the Woolsey and the Hill fires west of Los Angeles. Devastating scenes, and it's reckoned that the 2018 wildfire season in California will go down as one of the most devastating on record. Horrifying latest numbers: 42 sadly have lost their lives and more than 200 missing.
Yes, incredible scenes over the United States. But what causes these wildfires? Well, let's bring our experts in. Come on in, Eleanor. Eleanor Hunt is joining us this week. Welcome along to the show. Your first time on. When we always do this the first time, just explain a little bit about what your role is here at the Met Office, what your day job is, if you like.
So I work up in the Operations Centre as a Deputy Chief Meteorologist on the global bench. So I do forecasting for anywhere around the globe, really. Especially looking at severe weather. So
you're a world weather expert, and you're always looking at well, a lot of the time, dramatic weather and
yes.
weather that has humanitarian impacts.
Yes.
Okay, let's deal with these wildfires, horrendous scenes. What causes wildfires? What are they mainly sparked by?
So mainly it's actually human intervention. So people leaving glass on the ground or dropping a cigarette. It's usually human started.
And what are the meteorological phenomena, consequences, or what really gets them going weather-wise?
So you obviously need very dry conditions. You need dry vegetation, something to burn, but also strong winds, which helps the fire to spread quickly. So that creates very dangerous wildfire conditions.
And this happens every year?
Yes.
But I think we can show a graph that shows that there's been more of them over recent years. What's this?
This was sent out on Twitter by a scientist in the States, Robert Rode, and he's talking about how this year, like last year, like 2017, there's been an unusually hot and dry fire season in the United States. And let's move in on that graph. So this shows an increasing temperature on the bottom.
It's in Fahrenheit because they're Americans, the American scale. So it's in Fahrenheit along the bottom, going up to the 70s.
And then we've got rainfall on the y-axis, increasing rainfall as you move higher on the graph. So typically you could divide it into four parts: cool and dry, cool and wet, hot and wet, hot and dry. And all of the dots represent a season or a year. Now, these colours indicate which decade typically these dots come from. It's difficult for people like me who are colourblind to determine exactly what it is. But these reds are the important thing, because they're all clustered in the hot and dry category. And around these red dots, you've also got a square indicating one of the 10 largest wildfires, and for some of them, a diamond, 10 most destructive wildfires. So effectively, you've got hot and dry cluster of very recent years and coinciding with either the largest or the most destructive or both. So quite a frightening graph, isn't it?
This is showing so that more recently we've seen more hot and dry summers, and that's the consequence of that is more wildfires. And that's what you'd expect, really.
Yes, yeah. I mean, we've had drought for the last 5 years over the California region, so the starting conditions, everything's very dry already, so it's primed for wildfires.
Is there any good news on the horizon? Let's take a look at the forecast. So this is California here. This is the pressure pattern. You can see a big area of high pressure. What does that mean?
So over the next few days, we've got the pressure gradient easing out slightly over the California area. So slightly lighter winds expected. So in some ways that's a good thing to help reduce the spread of the fire. But the fires, because they're so hot, the bigger ones can create their own winds. So if you've got light meteorological winds, the fire can become very unpredictable.
Yeah, it's really tricky for the firefighters on the ground. So if you've got wind, meteorological wind, the forecasters can predict it, and actually then you kind of know where it's going to go. But it can, obviously, the faster the wind, the faster the fire will spread. So you'd think lighter winds would be good news, but it's not necessarily that, because lighter winds, then the fire generates its own wind, because wind is basically a temperature contrast. So where the fire is, it's obviously very hot. Nearby, it's not so hot. So they generate their own winds, and then they can go all over the place. So actually, it can be more dangerous when the winds fall lighter.
Yeah, it's certainly much more difficult for the firefighters.
And obviously, what we really need is precipitation. Is there going to be any rain in the forecast? We've run through to Sunday now, and basically high pressure is still in charge.
Yeah, no rain in the next week, but through next week, this low pressure system out here in the Pacific should start to make inroads, so we're hopeful for some rain by the middle of next week.
So fingers crossed, but at least for the next week, there doesn't look like there to be
still very dry.
Any respite. Thank you very much for that on the wildfires. While you're here, let's talk about other phenomena around the world. As we hinted at the start, amazing scenes in Jordan. This was from last week. Obviously, Jordan is renowned for being particularly dry. As you can see, all the mountains around the scene, bone dry. But what's going on here? This is just a torrent, and what's created these torrents?
So we've had a very unsettled spell over a lot of the Mediterranean and Middle East, and we've had very, very heavy downpours. This area you can see there's a lot of concrete, there's steep-sided valleys, so you get a very heavy thunderstorm, all the water comes down in one direction and you get flash flooding, and this is the result.
So there's a bridge there. You might think you're safe on a bridge above, well, you might not actually. I don't think I'd think you're safe, but watch what happens in this video. Move it on one, then...
This is incredible. Keep your eyes on the bridge here, because it's...
You've got a raging torrent underneath the bridge.
Very quickly. Oh, wait for it.
You see a
crack appearing. It just disappears. This is actually in Israel. Again, pictures taken last week from the same system, basically providing these thunderstorms in this part of the world. And yeah, just again another section. I mean, I wouldn't be anywhere near that if that was just that's crazy. What's the forecast for this part of the world? More thunderstorms to come?
Yeah. So if we spin round to the
way around to the Middle East, here we go.
So you can see this area here. We've got a lot of thundery activity through sort of the next few days. There's then a little bit of respite.
Here, Syria's here, and Kuwait's also had some torrential downpours, and they're getting a bit more rain. If we just again, it's a big clutch of thunderstorms across northern portions of the Gulf.
We've had a bit of a blocking high over northern Europe, which has deflected a lot of the unstable systems down across the Mediterranean. So areas that don't usually see a lot of rain.
But it might get a bit drier across northern parts of Saudi Arabia as you go towards the weekend. So it's turning a little bit drier here. Yeah. And actually that high pressure blocking across Europe is obviously influencing our weather as well. And we'll have more on that in just a moment. We look at the UK weather. But that's brilliant. Thank you very much for that insight, Eleanor. Thank you very much for coming on. Amazing stuff from around the world. And speaking of around the world, let's take a look.
Well, we've had a few questions. So already the snow questions have come in. We will be getting on to the...
it is getting colder, but it's staying mostly dry. There we go.
Let's see if there are any non-snow questions. Will it be sunny in northwest Scotland this weekend, asks Daniel Arm 27 on Instagram. And yes,
it will.
It will be sunny. Simple as that.
When we get east or particularly southeasterly winds, then the air dries out across the UK, and the northwestern corner often does best. And it's one of the reasons why when we get easterly winds, it's often in May. May is often a great time of year to go to northwest Scotland, but it's also happening in November because, yes, the weekend does look pretty good across the Highlands. The next few days are going to be very wet across the Highlands, it has to be said, but by Friday it's brightening up, and the weekend certainly should be sunny and reasonably mild as well. So
that's right. Laura Thompson on Twitter has said it feels like summer. When is the cold weather arriving?
Well, through the weekend and particularly into next week. The rest of this week is mild, very mild. In fact, temperatures could get into the high teens in places over the next few days. But yes, at the weekend we start to see a change. The winds will be changing direction, and next week does look a lot colder. At the moment, it doesn't look anything exceptional. But because it's mild this week, you will notice the change because it will be turning back to colder than average.
Excellent.
Let's take a look at last weekend, and not just last weekend, but last weekend 100 years ago. Obviously, a very poignant moment at the weekend. It was Armistice Day and Remembrance Sunday, 100 years since the end of World War I. We sent out various tweets from our archive, actually. And this was the weather chart on the day of the signing of the Armistice. Across the UK, you can see there, and there's a detailed picture, high pressure across the south. So not exactly the same as what we had this weekend, 100 years later. But I'm just showing you this just to highlight these things on the chart. We often show these charts from our archive, and they often have fascinating bits of meteorology in them. And these little circles, we often get questions about what exactly are those circles. And the answer is they're station circles. And although things in weather have developed hugely over the last 100 years, we now have supercomputers that do most of the forecasting, some things haven't really changed. And we still use these circle stations to this day to basically mark what the weather is doing. It's a very easy way of showing people what the weather's doing in one simple little graphic. Now, you have to know the code. You have to be able to decode it. But basically, this circle in the middle shows how much cloud there is. If it's full, then it's full cloud cover. If it's empty, then it's empty. There's no cloud cover. This shows the wind direction, and the number of barbs on the top is the strength of the wind. 21, that's the temperature. 4 is the dew point. This is current weather, and those little what do they call speech marks? Means drizzle, basically. This is the pressure, so the code there for the pressure, and that number down there is the pressure tendency. Is the pressure rising? Is the pressure going? But what I really want to highlight is these different symbols, these different squiggles, because they're different cloud symbols. Basically, each different type of cloud has its own different symbol. I thought I'd give Mr. McGivern a bit of a test. He loves this kind of thing. And you can play it at home.
I mean, this is the sort of thing that I used to deal with regularly, because when I started the Met Office more than 10 years ago, I started as a weather observer at an RAF station, and we used to observe the weather every hour, and sometimes more than that. And we used to then code it up, and these would then go out.
I knew he'd love this.
But that was more than 10 years ago.
Oh, you'll still be fine. If you just press on one, we can start the first question. Okay, so what type of cloud is this one? It looks a bit like one of those. What do they call it?
UFO
with the UFO cloud. Yeah. So it's like one of those. Do you know what that? Feel free to answer it at home. Again, send in your answers. What cloud is represented by that?
I'll give the viewers at home a moment to. I know, of course.
Of course you do. Of course you do. Yeah.
Now that on its own would be stratocumulus.
Yeah.
And then there's another symbol, which is like an oval upside down, and that would be cumulus. So I'm guessing that's a cloud known as stratocumulus, caused by the spreading out of cumulus.
He's good.
Cumulus clouds are these fluffy ones, right? Fair weather clouds.
Yeah.
When they join up and start to flatten out, you sometimes see that happen. You get this kind of thing. Stratocumulus, a layer of cloud that has bumps in it.
Okay, you've proved you got it right. Yeah, all
I'm
right,
just stalling because I know there's more difficult ones.
Moving on. Yes, you're right. From the spreading out of cumulus. Right, next one. This one is a beauty. What's that one? It's an easy one, actually. Saw plenty of these yesterday in and around the United Kingdom. Just a bit of a top clue there.
That would be a cumulonimbus cloud with an anvil. So you see mushroom cloud type of images with the anvil is what it's called, spreading out at the very top.
Yes.
Fantastic.
Cumulonimbus. Next one. What's this one? This is a bit of a tricky one.
All right. It just looks like a pushchair, doesn't it?
You should get it right. You've got one of those. What is this? What is this one?
So that would be an altocumulus cloud. That one on its own, and then you've got that, which sort of suggests that it's sort of spreading out somewhere or invading the sky or something like that. I think.
Press it. See what it is.
My credibility.
It's
is at stake here.
it's higher than altocumulus. It's cirrocumulus. That's the symbol for cirrus, isn't it? And that's
the bumpy bit.
Cirrocumulus.
Oh, dear.
Almost. 2 out of 3. Last one. I know you're enjoying this at home. Now, no sniggering at the back. What is this one, Aidan?
That is.
You've kind of answered it already with the double combo.
That's the one I said before.
Well, almost. What's that one? So that one is.
That would be the cumulus.
Yeah.
Right.
And what was that one that we said?
Spreading out. So cumulus, spreading out to altocumulus.
Let's see.
My third favourite cloud type. How did I not know the answer to that?
Altocumulus and the spreading out. Brilliant! Wasn't that fun? Everyone enjoyed it. Tune in next week when we'll have more squiggles in the sky.
I love that.
75%. I think that's a pass rate. Well done.
Okay.
Well done.
Good. I can keep my job.
That is sensational. Any more questions coming in? Let's have a quick look before we move on to the forecast for the UK.
Oh, we've had some answers.
We didn't live feed them.
Thundercloud Ryan says, yeah, very close with. Well, actually, it was the cumulonimbus. I'm assuming that was the answer to that. Steph ZZ from YouTube has asked if there's going to be any rain next week.
Well, no, was really the short answer to that.
Not at first, because there are signals that it will turn.
A week is a long time away. So the whole of next week, looking to, but certainly the first half of next week dominated by high pressure. There'll be some bits and pieces coming in from the east, but no significant.
And of course, it depends where Steph is based, because the northwest certainly looks like the place to be through next week. And let's take a look at that.
Well, Michael Hamilton says 12C this weekend. Well, actually, temperature will be going back down. We'll get above 12 Celsius the next few days. 12 Celsius, well,
perhaps on Saturday, depending on where you are.
Yeah, but temperatures will be going down by then. So what is going? Show us what is going on.
Pause it there. This is tomorrow afternoon.
In the forecast.
So by tomorrow afternoon, there's the jet stream. You can see it riding high over the UK. And when that happens, it often suggests that we've got mild air at the surface, and that is indeed what we have got through the rest of this week. And actually, during Wednesday in particular, we're going to have something known as the Föhn effect. So we started the week with sunshine and showers, southwesterly winds, but by tomorrow afternoon, we've got southerly winds. And if I put on, there we go, let's put on some weather. You can see sunny skies. Zoom into the UK there. Sunny skies across many areas, but cloudier and wetter towards the northwest. But with a southerly wind, well, that tends to benefit, if you like the warmth, areas to the north of hills. So North Wales, northern parts of Scotland, could get temperatures of 16 or 17 degrees. So it's turning mild through the next few days. And if we run through the pressure chart there, you can see a lot of isobars on the chart. So it's going to be breezy during Wednesday, and gales.
These weather fronts are coming into the northwest as well, and there will be quite a bit of rain in south of Scotland. There's a yellow warning in force actually for tomorrow for south of Scotland. So Dumfries and Galloway will be getting rain from those weather systems. But once that's out of the way, then now we're getting into Friday. What's going on now?
We've still got southerly winds, so we've still got milder than average air coming in from the south. But by the start of the weekend, you can see this. This is an area of high pressure. This is an area of low pressure. Big beasts either side of the UK. We're in this battleground in between, if you like. And the subtle change in the isobars there would indicate that through the weekend, we're going to start to see the winds come more from the southeast and perhaps the east by the end of the weekend. Now, the two things that will happen as a result of that, you can see with high pressure building in, it's likely to turn drier. And after a lot of cloud cover through Thursday and Friday, we're also pulling in drier air and generally clearer skies. So Saturday looks beautiful, increasingly sunny, and into Sunday as well. Plenty of sunshine for many areas. Now, we start off the weekend with around average temperatures, but those temperatures will start to fall away because of that easterly airflow. So a big change as we go through the next few days. Temperatures rising and then falling through the weekend and into the start of next week. Well, those temperatures will be below average. Now, we've got quite a technical diagram here that shows it nicely. These meteograms, that's what they're called. They're the bread and butter of meteorologists like us, because they tell us so much about what the weather's doing out to 15 days. So this goes all the way out to Tuesday of the week after next. But, of course, by then, what you're dealing with is very large error bars, because these meteograms, they take in data from 30 different computer simulations and summarize it in graphs. We've got wind direction on the top, we've got rainfall or sometimes snowfall. And then we've got temperature. Now, this is for Leeds, so somewhere central in the UK, but I suspect you'd see a similar trend wherever you look at. Should have chosen Hull.
There's people in Yorkshire
should have chosen
Leeds
Hull.
Central. Well, right, you should have chosen Hull,
yeah.
yes.
So you might not be able to see it clearly there, but this is the weekend, and you can see on the temperature trend, you've got a red line there indicating average daytime temperature, blue line average nighttime temperature, and these are the predictions with the error bars, and they're quite close together, and you can see that there's pretty large certainty.
Yeah, that's quite small for an error bar at this stage, isn't it? Out to that stage. So
Out to Monday.
It's warm, 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 and then it gets cold, and it's below average for pretty much all of next week, obviously with a greater uncertainty towards the end of next week.
Yeah, and similar for nighttime temperatures there as well. Now, the rainfall is pretty clear-cut. Through the weekend into the start of next week, very little rainfall. And then big error bars by the time we get to the middle of next week, because there are some simulations that suggest we'll have a greater likelihood of low pressure and showers or rain coming through. So a bit more uncertainty about the rainfall into next week than the temperatures. And then this is the wind. So it shows the direction the wind is coming from. Now, through the rest of this week here, the wind direction is quite clearly from the south, and then it just starts to switch around to more of an easterly airflow, and that coincides with these temperature trends and the rainfall trends and so on.
The darker the colour there, the more certainty. So by the time you get to here, it could be almost any wind direction. This is all quite pale, but those dark yellow colours there suggesting pretty certain that it will be a southerly wind for Thursday and Friday, and then an easterly wind fairly nailed on, as we say, for the weekend. So
there you go. It tells us a lot.
It does tell us a lot, and that's really fascinating. But also, we can break it down even more simply than that, really, and just talk about something called air masses. Now, air mass is one of the things you've learned first in meteorology. Basically, the science behind it is that every different type of wind has its own different type of weather. And what we've got, a classic example of that this week, subtle changes in wind direction will bring very different changes to our weather patterns. We started the week like this with low pressure to the north and the winds mostly coming in from the west or the southwest in particular. And that's brought, well, if you think about where the air's come from, it's come from the Atlantic. So it's bringing in moisture and it's bringing in relatively warm air. So warm and moist, that combination producing the heavy downpours that we've seen over recent days. So that's why the start of the week was with heavy showers. Fast forward to the middle of the week. Now, we've still got low pressure to the north, but the isobars have just shifted. So now if we follow them, they're pointing down to the south. Now, down here, there's a lot more land, so it's not as wet, basically drawing up dry air from Spain and across France, across the UK. So it's still warm because it's coming up from the south, but it's also dry. So that's why Thursday and Friday, mostly dry across the UK and bringing up that warmth. So where we see the sunshine, temperatures will really jump up. And then finally, we're still looking at southerly winds, but they've shifted around now, so coming in from the southeast. And more that turns into an easterly as we go through into next week. Now, again, you've got a lot of land over here, so it's very dry air coming across the UK. We're not going to see a lot of rain, but it is turning colder. Now, here's the key. This is November, and this large landmass hasn't had the time yet to cool down as much as it will have done. If this was February and we were looking at these, then we would be looking at a lot of very cold air and a greater risk of seeing some snow. But at the moment, the land hasn't had time to cool down. It will still bring colder air next week, but it's largely dry, certainly as we go into the weekend and the early part of next week. So we're looking at turning colder, but because it's drier air, it will also be turning sunnier through the weekend and early part of next week.
Someone asked earlier, someone asked, Russ on Facebook asked, another beast from the east, right? Because this is a similar weather pattern to what we saw at the end of February and the beginning of March. Beast from the east. Now, of course, that was after a whole winter of Siberia cooling down and getting very cold indeed, and then we had all that air directed towards the UK. Siberia isn't that cold at the moment, and in fact we have had easterlies at this time of year that have brought us cold weather and snow and so on, and back in 2010, if you remember, we had northeasterlies and very cold weather digging in at the end of November, but the source region for this air isn't that cold at the moment. It's not, like you say, it's not cooled down, so not really a
So yes, it's getting colder. Temperatures will be dropping off significantly as we go into next week, but it doesn't look anything exceptional. It doesn't even look that cold, really, especially cold, but it will feel a lot colder because it has been so very mild. Now, the next big question, is it going to snow? And of course, for that, as well as the cold, you do need moisture. And this isn't a great wind direction because it's bringing a lot of dry weather. We may see more of an easterly component as we go through next week, which will bring showers. But because it's not especially cold, at the moment, it doesn't look like we're not expecting much snow. There will be a little bit over the hills, but it's November. There's nothing unusual about that whatsoever. So if we see some showers next week, there will be a little bit of wintry weather over the hills, but that is about it at this stage. Obviously, a lot of people are going to have a lot of interest in this because of what happened last winter. And stay tuned to the forecast. We will be constantly monitoring. We will be constantly giving you the very latest updates.
Siberia, of course, is about -15 at the moment. When we had the beast from the east at the end of February, it was -40 odd. And so -15, of course, it's not going to get carried all the way across to the UK. 5 degrees for the UK. You just have to add a few numbers
Typically early next week, temperatures will be single figures. So a big drop compared to what we're looking at this week. But
I had an interesting question in about thunder. We've not been talking about it, but it's an interesting question nevertheless. Sheila has asked, what gives thunder its sound? Sheila on Facebook. And effectively, what you've got when you've got lightning is the rapid heating of the air to a temperature that's even higher than the temperature on the surface of the sun. And when you heat up the air that much, that quickly, then it effectively expands really quickly, and it's that expansion of the air surrounding a lightning strike that gives thunder.
Makes the sound. The air expands and goes like that, longitudinal waves and all that. Great
Thank
question. Thank you for that. Do keep sending us in your questions. We will try and answer as many as we can. If we don't answer them this week, we'll answer them another time. Actually, you can watch a video on our YouTube channel, our sister YouTube channel, Learn About Weather. We'll put a link in the description. On YouTube, we have another channel, Learn About Weather, and there's a video there explaining how thunderstorms work, along with all kinds of other videos about jet streams and about rainbows. Loads of those around yesterday as well. Do keep getting in touch. Do follow us on social media, particularly with these updates of the weather this week and into next week. You can follow us on Instagram, follow us on Facebook, follow us on Snapchat and Twitter as well. Thank you very much for watching. Do give us a thumbs up as well if you've enjoyed watching here today. Thanks again to Eleanor, and we'll see you again next week.
Bye-bye.